Mummy, can we just go back to the war years again? I'm quite interested in how people felt at that time. Can you tell us, you were a young girl, were you really aware of what was happening during the war?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you'd have to be stupid not to know what was going on. Because every day there was something different, some other tragedy.
Were people scared the whole time, or did they just carry on their lives?
No, after a while, people just thought, well, if it's going to happen, it'll happen. And I had a friend who used to go with her another girlfriend to a shelter. And they went to this shelter that was a very big shelter, and it was an underground shelter. It wasn't a tube, but it was a big factory that had an underground parking place in it. And she was sitting on a seat, and an really, really unusual thing happened. A bomb, instead of a direct hit on the actual building, it went, those days they had big chimneys, it went down a chimney and exploded when it got down. And she was sitting, and all the girls, there was a crowd of girls, and all of them that were sitting about 2 or 3 away from her got killed, and all her friends that were sitting with her on the other side, not a scratch. And it showed people that if it's going to be, it'll be. Because the same thing happened with my father. I think I told you the story of my father.
Story. Yeah.
And that was a miracle. I mean, my father never ever came home that way. He always came home down Balance Road. And that was just where the bomb went off.
Do you think a lot of people, well, I think after the war, a lot of people had effects of what happened during the war. I mean, nowadays it's called post-traumatic stress syndrome, but people probably didn't realise that they were suffering from the results of what happened then.
No, especially I think the soldiers suffered more.
Right, Daddy?
Because they saw what happened all around them every day. At least one day we didn't have an air raid. The next day we had an air raid. So it was only occasionally that we went through it. But the soldiers had it continually.
You started to tell me about that you remember about the tragedy that happened at in the underground when there was the crash.
Yes,
the crush.
Now
of
that
people.
was an unforgettable incident, because it wasn't even a bomb. It was just people in a panic rushing down the tube because there was an air raid warning went. And at the same time the air raid warning went, so guns that were in the park fired off completely at random. There was a mistake. A mistake happens. Unfortunately, this one caused a couple of 100 people to get killed, because the people down the bottom panicked, and everybody fell on top of each other, and they were all crushed. And in the end, there was over 200 people killed in that tragedy, and that was without a bomb.
Was that very near to where you were living, or?
Yes, that was in Bethnal Green.
Did you know anybody that was caught in that?
No, I didn't. We didn't know people that went as far as there, because it was, what, 10 minutes walk from her. So it wasn't really. If the air raid sirens went, it would have been too late to have got. You went to the nearest shelter that you had.
Can you remember your parents' attitude kind of during the war? Did they try to shelter you from things or protect you, or were you really by that time old enough to know?
Oh no, we were old enough. No, they didn't have to protect us. We were all teenagers at the time. But my mother didn't want us to go out a lot, like in the evening. But after a while, she said, go out and enjoy yourselves. Go out. Don't keep sitting in. And that's when we started to go out to a dance, or we went to the pictures. Because by that time, things were beginning to open up. Because at the beginning of the war, things closed. There was no cinemas or theatres. They all closed. But after a few weeks, months, everything started. When there was no warning, everything started again.
And did all transport run regularly?
The transport run marvellous. The London transport, especially the buses, were absolutely marvellous, because they had to they had to go in the blackout, and they had these tiny lights only for the buses to go. And I don't think there was never a late bus or anything like that. Buses went.
And I know that your brother Norris, during the war, did all sorts of things, some of which are very, very interesting. Well, most of which are very, very interesting. But I think he upset your mother with some of his actions. Is that right? Do you want to tell us about any of that?
No, he didn't upset my mother during the war. He upset my mother before the war.
Oh, it was before the war. Okay.
Because Uncle Norris was the clever one in our family, and he went to a grammar school. And my mother had very high hopes for him. And he decided, no, he's going to go to, it was Palestine then. And my mother was against it, naturally. My mother wanted him at home. My mother wanted him to do, so my mother sent him to a place that he was very good at drawing. My mother sent him to a man who did the drawings that went up on the coming shortlists on
what, for the cinema?
On the cinema.
Really? Okay.
And he learnt how to do that. But then he didn't want that anymore. So he left and he went to an electrician. And my mother said, all right, you want to be an electrician? He could do that. But he only went to be an electrician for a little while. And then he came and said to my mother, I'm going on a farm. Because when I go to Israel, to Palestine, as it was, when I go to Palestine, I'm going onto a farm, a kibbutz, and I've got to learn what to do on a farm. And so he went to, it was called the David Eder Farm, and he went there, and he was there for about 7 or 8 months. Learning, and then he came and he said he was going to Palestine, and my mother was so upset about it. My mother wouldn't talk to him. I remember my mother never said goodbye to him even. She laid in bed in the morning, she was crying, and Uncle Asher came in and said, "Mummy, say goodbye to him at least." "No, he's going without my consent." And he went. And we didn't hear from him for a little while. And then we got a letter that he was in Italy. My mother said, "What is he doing in Italy?" What he was doing was, he had a visa to go to Palestine, but he was waiting for a suitable person to come to give the visa to get to Palestine legally, and he was going to go on one of these boats that were taking out young men and women to Palestine. And he did that, and he arrived in Palestine. And
what about the letters that he was writing
and then he
you were
used to
writing?
write every single week, and I wrote to him, and if I never wrote, my mother would be furious with me. "You haven't written to your brother yet, you haven't written." I said, "But why don't you write?" No, she wouldn't write, but she made sure that I wrote. And a lot of the letters Uncle Norris kept, and Simon said that he had some, but I don't know what happened.
I think that's true. I
them.
think he told me that he's got the letters.
I don't know what happened to them, but there was nothing. I couldn't say anything about what was happening in London at the time, because you weren't allowed. It would be censored.
So would somebody read your letter?
Yeah, all the letters were censored.
And what about the letters that came in?
Yeah, even more so.
So somebody was reading the letters before it got to you?
Yes,
And vice versa.
And if they thought it was anything that would give any information to the enemy, it was just struck out.
Okay. And your mother never ever wrote to him?
My mother never ever wrote to him, all the years that he was there. And then, I think you know the story of Uncle Norris, what happened to him. The British Army suddenly caught up with him, and they came round to Uncle Joey and said, "Where's your nephew?" And he said, "I don't know where my nephew is. He's a young boy. You don't think he's going to stay with me, do you? He comes here occasionally, but I haven't seen him for ages." So when Uncle Norris heard that, he thought, there's only one answer, and that is to join the British Army. So he went to the embassy, said he wanted to join the army, and they said, "No, you can't, because you're here." So Uncle Norris said, "Look, don't tell me. I know my rights. I'm a British subject and I want to join the army." And they couldn't answer him, and they asked him what he does for a living, and he said he was an electrical engineer, which he was only had just started. And they said, "Right, we'll take you." So they took him into the Royal Mechanical Engineers, and they put him into a place that was dealing with tanks, rewiring tanks. But rewiring the tanks were Palestinians, Jewish Palestinians. And when they saw Uncle Norris, they realised that he didn't know anything about the tanks. So they said to him in Ivrit, "Don't worry, We'll tell you what to do. We'll sing in Ivrit, and you follow our instructions, listening to the song. And they used to sing, put the green light in, put the brown light there, put the all the different colours where you should plug it in, and little by little he learnt, and he became a good qualified engineer. And there was one time when they put him on a boat to go out to, there was a big boat that the Germans said they had sunk, but they hadn't. It was badly, it was really badly, there was a lot of casualties on it, but the British wanted the boat. So they sent the engineers out to repair it, and it was in Alexandria. He said he was stationed in Alexandria, and he had to go out in this boat. But they didn't want the Germans to know that the boat was still being able to be, it'll be all right. So what they did was they made out as if all these boys had been taken prisoner. It was 6 months before we had a letter from Uncle Noel, and my mother was so sure that, you know, that we hadn't heard. And then finally we got a whole load of letters. About 20 letters came that they'd held them up. And that's what they used to do. But
is there anything else you want to tell us about the war years?
well, all I could say is that the people that went through 2 world wars, and there were plenty that did, I don't know how they kept it up. I don't know how they did it. Because the First World War, there was very little bombing. Occasionally there was a Zeppelin raid, but it wasn't bombs dropping like it was in the Second World War. But it was such a harrowing time. But people, we weren't used to anything like that. But that was, it's very hard. It's very, very hard to go back and think about it all. And it's also very hard when I've just read a book about Liverpool, about the war, the air raids in Liverpool. And that was absolutely shocking. It wasn't so bad as bad in London. It was only in London. It was only in certain places that that they were really bad bombs. I don't really think we went through it, and not like they did by the docks and all round other places. But we Bethnal Green, I mean, we had bombs, but not like I've just read.
So shall we go forward now to after you were married, okay, and will you tell us about your living situation, your accommodation when you first got married? It wasn't very pleasant, was it?
Very much living accommodation, because by then the men were coming back from the army, and people that had married during the war, they didn't have anywhere to live. But my mother happened to be walking along near where we live, and she saw an old friend of one of my aunts, and she was asking how all the children are. And my mother told her that I'd just got married, that I'd been married, and I hadn't anywhere to live. Hadn't anywhere to live. So she said, I've got 2 rooms in my house. She lived on 3 floors. There was like 2 rooms downstairs, then 2 on the next floor and 2 up above. And she wasn't using the 2 rooms above. She said, but there is a cooker, and it's on it's not in the room, it's on the landing, but there's no water. She'd have to go down into there was an inside loo, which I thought was wonderful, because in those days lots of people only had outside loos. And there was a little sink in there, and you had to go down there and get all the water. Well, it was something, and it wasn't. It was near where my mother lived, so my mother said, "You'll come to me for dinner, and I'll make something, and you could live there." And I lived there for nearly 3 years, going up and down the stairs all the time.
And you'd had a baby by then?
No, I was pregnant.
Right.
I was pregnant, and I thought, I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought, how am I going to manage going up and down the stairs, baby? And then somebody that we know, it's always somebody that you know, otherwise you couldn't get anything. Somebody that we know came round to our house. It was some relation of my aunt's. Came round, and he was a tally man. A tally man was a man who used to, years ago, not many Jewish people did it, but non-Jewish people did. They always had a tally man. They used to buy things off this man that used to come round, and then they used to pay off for it. And he said he went to a house and he was talking to the people in Evering Road. We're talking to the people, and they said, oh, somebody just moved out upstairs. Also, just 2 rooms. So he said to my mother, quick, go round there, see if you could get. So we went round there, and they said, well, these people didn't mind if I paid and put water in the kitchen, like in one room, and the other room was the bedroom. So I had water, a cooker on the landing at the same, but there was no toilet. The toilet was on the ground floor. So every time you wanted to go to the toilet, you had to go down 3 flights of stairs.
And a bath?
No bath. You used to go to the public bath. And so I had 1 child, and then I became pregnant with my other child, with Sheila. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to manage, but I did for about nearly a year and a half.
So there were 4 of you in one room.
Yes, yes. There was the 2 beds that we had, and then it was a large room, and then in the corner there was a bed that you slept in, and the cot. And then...
And in your kitchen, was it... So you ate in the kitchen?
Yes, yes. We had the one room.
And nowhere to sit, nowhere to... No,
we had armchairs. It was quite... It wasn't bad at all. And then they said Stilton kept going to the council. No, you've still got somewhere to live. But Daddy wasn't well at that time, and I said it was to do with the army, to do with the army.
Which it probably was.
Yeah. So we got a letter to say that as your husband is working, and he's earning a certain wage, they're building these blocks of flats, and it's for people in that age group, in that group, money-wise. I think it was £12 something a week if you earned.
If you earned £12 a week.
Yes. That was the...
And what was the rent?
The rent... I think it was 13 shillings a week. And so where was it? It was at Newington Green. I'd never heard of Newington Green. But anyway, we went and we saw it, and it was 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and it was a miracle to us. And we took it, and it was very funny because on each floor, there was 3 floors. We were on the 2nd floor, and on each floor was a Jewish couple. How they worked that out, I'll never know. There was a Cohen's on the 1st floor, then there was the other Cohen's on the other end, Leela and
Brian
Cohen. And then there was a barber who had 2 boys on the next floor. Then there was us, and then there was some people, I forget what their name was, that lived in the corner. Right. And we lived there, and all the time until Daddy died.
And how was it that your mother and father then moved so close to you?
Because they were going to destroy all the houses where my mother lived to build a block of flats, and that they got priority, and people were moving out all the time. And then when my mother said no, she's not going to move, first of all it was the cats. You couldn't take a cat with. Then they managed to get round that. Is it finished?
No.
They managed to get round that, and they said, well, by that time Auntie Reenie was here,